Hi everyone, today I'm going to be doing my second recent reads video. I recently finished the next 5 books that I had planned to read for this year, and it's kind of sad because some of the blogs that I follow, they're on like their 4th or 5th recent reads video, but I've been doing a lot of writing, so that's my excuse for not reading as much as some other people. And here they are for you. So the first book I read in this block was a book called Saturn by Ben Bova. And I actually found this book in the dollar store around Christmas time, and I thought the little write-up on the back looked interesting, so I bought it because it was like $1, so I thought, why not? I haven't really read much sci-fi, so I really wanted to read something that was kind of science fiction, just to kind of delve into the genre a little bit more. And this book looked like it would be pretty good. It's the story of a group of explorers who are sent on this like world ship to Saturn to kind of study it. And it's basically all of the radical thinkers from Earth who are sent there by Earth's kind of religious governments that have kind of taken over the planet. But it was sort of meant to be a social experiment to see how a society can grow out of all of these like radical thinkers. But it was really anything but that. It was a horrible book. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. This book was pretty poorly planned. The characters were incredibly flat and incredibly dull, and all these people who went on this trip were supposed to be like free thinkers and radicals who had these ideas that differed from the government. But really there was no character in here who had a radical idea or philosophy or anything. They were all really dry, boring characters. Ben Bova is an atheist, and he really makes his dislike of religion known in this book. Not only is Earth kind of run by these religious sects, but he paints every religious character as a villain, and it doesn't really make much sense to me. There's a couple characters who are serial killers who are like devout Catholics, and I just don't really... It just doesn't really add up to me. I mean, sure, there have been villains in all different kinds of religion and stuff, but he goes out of the way to paint every single character who has some sort of belief as a villain, and it was kind of just pathetic almost. The whole novel is also kind of a contradiction because the governments on Earth are sending all these radical thinkers to Saturn to study it, but they've supplanted informants and people in this government to kind of run it the way that they want. So what was the point of getting rid of all of these people and putting them all in one boat if you're just going to try to control them even more? It didn't make a lot of sense, and it was just one of the worst books I've ever read, and I really should have known better having found it in a dollar store. So after reading that horrible science fiction, I decided to move on to something that I knew I would like, and I moved on to fantasy and read Steles of the Sky by Elizabeth Bear. And this book is the final book in the Eternal Sky trilogy. It's a series that I started reading about this time last year. I just finished book 2 of the series in January, and it was in my first recent reads video. And I've been very sort of conflicted about these books. I really like them, the writing is incredible, and the world building that Bear does is some of the best world building that I've ever read in a fantasy novel. But her dialogue is very lacking. And on Goodreads and stuff like that, I've noticed that I'm not the only one who thinks this. It's almost like her dialogue doesn't really match the kind of setting or the characters that she has. It reads almost like a modern English, and it's sort of like all the world building she does gets tossed out of the window as soon as the characters open their mouth. Another thing that I didn't really like about this book in particular was that a couple of the storylines just kind of ended. It almost seemed like it should have been split into another 2 books to kind of look after some of the characters. If you've read the book, there's the character Yang Chen, who is the Dowager Empress, and her storyline just kind of abruptly ends, and that's kind of it. She doesn't really have the consequences for her actions, and you don't really know what happens to her after that. And there's another character at the end who I was really interested in, and she only appeared in a couple of scenes. And her name was Lady Diao, I think it was. But her storyline just kind of ends, and you don't really know what happens to her either, and it just seemed kind of ridiculous to put her in the story if you weren't going to do anything with it. However, I was really happy with how this book ended and how the series ended as a whole, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that I cried a little bit at the end. The last fourth of this book was just so fast-paced and so interesting. The way that this book ends, I wanted that to happen from the start, and I was really pleased with that. So the next book that I read was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I mentioned in another video that Sylvia Plath has been a big influence of mine, especially in poetry. I've always loved her. I discovered her in high school, and just the grittiness and realness of her poems really stuck out with me. And I'd never read The Bell Jar before, mostly because I just didn't have it. But I found it at Chapters and decided to give it a read because I've always loved her poetry, and I thought her book would be really good as well. And I was really happy with it. The way that Sylvia Plath writes depression is incredible in this book. Like, it's almost a creeping feeling. You can see it sort of manifest in the character from the beginning, and you kind of see it progress and develop, but it's never specifically stated that that's what's wrong with her or what's really happening. She just kind of writes this odd sense of deterioration that continues throughout the book, and I love that, and it was so well done. I also really related to the main character of Esther. There was this one attribute that she has where she sort of wants to do all of these different things, but she doesn't really know how to get there, and something is holding her back, and she just kind of watches all of these things go by without her. And I thought that was really interesting, and I really loved how life kind of carried on without her while she was kind of stuck in this limbo throughout the whole book. There's this one paragraph that I underlined that I'm going to read, and it really describes perfectly that sort of feeling of watching everything go by while being unable to achieve what you want to. From the tip of every branch, like a fat purple fig, a wonderful future beckoned and winked. One fig was a husband and a happy home and children, and another fig was a famous poet, and another fig was a brilliant professor, and another fig was E.G., the amazing editor, and another fig was Europe and Africa and South America, and another fig was Constantine and Socrates and Attila and a pack of other lovers with queer names and offbeat professions. And another fig was an Olympic lady crew champion. And beyond that, above these figs, were many more figs I couldn't quite make out. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest, and as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. And that metaphor for life and not knowing what to choose and watching it all go by while you just kind of sit in your indecision it's so amazing. Like, I got chills reading that, and it just sums up this character perfectly. And I know that everybody kind of has those moments of self-doubt and they don't know which way to go, and I think Plath just wrote that attribute into this character so well. The one thing that I didn't like is kind of a picky thing. It's just that the end is kind of ambiguous. The story follows this character who slowly descends into depression, and a lot of the book is spent in an institution while she tries to get better. And in the end, you don't really know if she gets better or if she doesn't. And if I had written it, I know it sounds a little dark, but if I had written it, I would have had her die in the end. I like it when the characters die. These next two books I wasn't originally going to add to this video because they're not really novels. They're more sort of companion books, which are sort of factual books that have to do with a certain franchise or universe. But then I thought, what the hell, I'll talk about them. So the next book that I read was The Bounty Hunter Code, and it is technically written by Daniel Wallace, Ryder, Wyndham, and Jason Fry, but they play it off as being written by the Bounty Hunters Guild with annotated notes by Boba Fett and Bosk and Aurra Sing and Jango Fett and Greedo and, you know, all these different bounty hunters from the Star Wars universe. I originally got this book for Christmas from my sister Victoria. She got me this one and the Imperial Handbook. And they're part of a series of sort of handbooks or guidebooks that Star Wars has put out based on different organizations within the Star Wars universe. And the Jedi Code and the Sith one actually have gotten really good reviews, and a lot of people really liked them. So I thought I would give this book a try because, you know, I love these kinds of companion books, like factual books. Like I said in another video, The Essential Guide to Alien Species is one of my favorite books. But I didn't enjoy this Bounty Hunter Code as much as I was expecting to. A lot of it was just kind of repeated information, stuff like where you can find bounty postings, how to go about acquiring your bounties, and where to drop off your bounties and how to go about getting paid and stuff like that. It was almost too technical. My favorite part of the book was this chapter that had to deal with different houses within the guild and kind of their requirements for bounty hunters who want to join them and the kind of bounties that they deal with. But it was really such a small part of the book, and I think it could have been much more. If I had written it, I would have concentrated more on different bounty hunters kind of throughout history, different bounties or different wanted personnel, what they were wanted for, different quests and stuff like that. I think it would have been more interesting that way if it had been sort of a fact file about different characters and stuff rather than just kind of an info dump of where you can go to find bounty postings. I was also kind of confused about the target audience for the book. It's written really technical, but all of the sort of annotations by different bounty hunters and stuff like that were kind of really childish. Like, they were jokey and seemed like they were kind of written for a younger audience, but a younger audience wouldn't have understood a lot of the writing in it. So I don't really know who the target audience of the book was. Still though, all of this useless information will probably be filed away in my brain and I will have it for the rest of my life and still not know how to do math. So the final book that I read is another one of these sort of companion books, and it is The Art of Magic the Gathering Zendikar by James Wyatt. For those who don't know, Magic the Gathering is a tabletop card game that's been around for a long time. I don't really know when it was established, but it's probably like the 90s or the early 80s or something like that. And I'd always wanted to get into it. When I was a little kid and collecting Pokemon cards, I bought a package of Magic cards, not knowing what they were, and just kind of looked at the pictures because the pictures were so amazing. And it wasn't until I think 2 years ago that I finally got into Magic. My friend Dan kind of got me into it and showed me how to play, and I taught my sister Victoria, and then we found out that one of my cousins actually has been playing for a while. So we get together and play every once in a while, and it's totally a nerd game, but it's a lot of fun, and I like it more for the pictures than anything else. And when I saw this book full of different art from the cards, I thought I would pick it up and give it a look through, because I don't really know much about the world of Magic the Gathering. I've only played the card games and looked at the pictures. I don't really know anything about the worlds that it's set in. And what's really interesting about Magic the Gathering is that it's set on all these different worlds called planes. And there are these characters called planeswalkers who have this ability to shift between different worlds. And these different worlds don't know that other worlds exist, because they're all sort of set in a fantasy world without a lot of, sci-fi technology or stuff like that. Through these different worlds, you get different cards and different blocks, and different storylines that kind of carry through a certain block. So this book is the first in the Art of Magic the Gathering series, and it has to deal with the planet Zendikar, which is a planet that's sort of crumbling under the weight of these 3 alien titans that have been imprisoned on the planet. And one thing that I didn't expect when I bought this book is that it really goes into detail about the whole world and the story of the block of these cards, and I really liked that. And it's really great because the pictures are so small that you don't really get a feel for how much detail were put into them until you look at them through this book. The one complaint that I have about it, and again it's kind of a nitpicky thing, but I think there could have been more art included in the book. There's hundreds upon hundreds of images that are made for these cards in each block. And while this book did feature a lot of them, I know that there was a lot that wasn't featured in the book, and I would have liked to see a little bit more. But it is a really good book, and if you like digital art and art books, I would definitely check it out because the images in there are amazing. I mean, one of the things that Magic does so well is pick the right artists to bring their worlds alive. So that's it for this video. If you liked it, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. And if you have any suggestions of books that I should read or that I would like, make sure to add those to the comment section below. On Monday, I'm going to be starting a new sort of series throughout the week. At least, hopefully, it will start on Monday. But in those videos, I'm going to be reciting poetry that I've written throughout the week. I'm starting this new challenge where I'm going to be writing a poem a day for 30 days. And I'm going to be sharing some of them with you. As always, make sure to follow me on my social media accounts. They'll be posted below. And head over to Amazon.com where my ebooks for my series A Chronicle of Crowns are posted, and you can get them there. I'm still trying to figure out a way to get these books mass-produced, so until then, you can still get the ebook on Amazon. And make sure to head over to lulu.com and get your hands on Transcendence, which was my first photography and poetry series. And yeah, that's about it. See y'all next week.